say a little bit about Warner Brothers Discovery. Like a lot of companies, but not all of them, we have more than one brand. And it's really an understatement. We have hundreds of brands, everything from Harry Potter to CNN. Some of those brands are video-centric brands. Others are just selling things online. And all of those brands have lots of different endpoints, lots of different websites, apps, connected devices, et cetera. And so that's kind of the context of what we're here to talk about. So we're going to talk about how we're collecting web engagement data via AWS. We're going to talk about how we went about setting up a recommendation engine for unauthenticated web traffic. So it's all behavioral. We're going to talk about the architecture and the data schema a little bit, and some recommendation examples, what we're talking about, and then how we measure the impact on customer engagement. So we have this thing called Prism. So Prism is not something we bought, it's something we built. So it was a large effort by a small team, but some of the people in this room helped out. And it's the first days of Prism were sort of in the days of CCPA terror, when we were trying to make sure that we were privacy compliant, and we needed a single bit of code to run on all of our endpoints to sort of help us manage that. But then as we built upon that, we figured out identity. We started to gather telemetry, event-driven telemetry. We went ahead and built in the ability to do hypothesis testing, some A/B testing. We're not using a vendor for that. We can do that with Prism out of the box. And so when we had that foundation, we realized that we could create these products on top of that for marketing, segmentation, measuring video, and those kinds of things. So we do that with what we call a Warner Media cookie that establishes the identity, and we do have the ability to track, in many cases, track that cookie across multiple domains, brands that we own within the Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella. So if you're wondering how we got our custom software deployed across hundreds of endpoints, apps, and websites, it wasn't because the organization automatically lent itself to that sort of an effort. We made it really simple, basically one line of code and a CNAME, and we were in business. We could get code on the pages, and then we had some SDKs to deploy into apps. But our goal here was to, again, gather telemetry. So we're out there. We in the last 30 days, we've gathered billions of interactions, millions of unique users. This is actually a little bit old data. We're over 200 properties now. And we're gathering thousands of data points every second of every day. So the problem to solve, you go back one? Yeah. Sure. The problem that we want to solve is as we're measuring engagement and establishing identity, collecting telemetry, creating profiles and segments, how can we increase engagement through cross-brand marketing? So once we put all this stuff together and started looking at it in a single data source, which was a brand new, wonderful experience for people like Steven, who is used to pulling things out of literally hundreds of different analytics silos and doing Herculean data engineering to get it into one place. Now he's got it all in one table. So what can you do with that? So we start to look at the Warner Brothers Discovery circulatory system. This is just a visualization. The dots are brands. The little tiny clouds of people are consumers, and the overlap is represented by the sharing of the colors. And so two or more brands or users are represented by a cloud, and the magnitude of that cloud is the size of the cloud. So this is just sort of a visual to help you start understanding all the different overlaps and all the different parts of the graph that you can start to build. So the architecture, I'm not going to walk through this. It's a lot of boxes with a lot of Kinesis prefixes. But the point of this is that it scales wonderfully. We can scale it up for tentpole events that we're expecting to come along, like March Madness Live. But we also handled sudden, unexpected events like CNN breaking news on January 6th, 2021. So does all that pretty seamlessly. And the beauty of it was when we went to go figure out personalized, which Steven's going to talk about, we were able to just sort of plug and play as another Kinesis Firehose consumer. So he'll explain that in a bit.
So, like Tim said, we built a customer data platform using the AWS resources, and we were able to plug Amazon Personalize into that really easily. So back in September here, we started using Prism, kind of like the same SDK that was used to collect the data about engagement to actually serve content onto the page. So right here is an example on tbs.com of our kind of first prototype promo carousel. And we just had like 4 promos at that time. One of them was for Bleacher Report, which is one of our brands, Follow the MLB. And it was the worst performing promotion throughout September. You can see in this chart, this is the percentage, or sorry, just the click activity, a daily trends over time. So in September, it was actually the worst performing promo. And then it just skyrocketed in October. And this is kind of like how we got into the recommendation engine mindset. We were like, at first I thought this was a bug. It was like something's wrong with our click tracking. Of course, like we should go figure this out. But my colleagues who actually pay attention to sports were like, no, Steven, actually, TBS is hosting the MLB postseason this year. They're broadcasting it, and they've got a lot of content on the website. So this is actually just an influx of traffic that's more interested in baseball than usual. So personalization was always kind of like on our minds, but this was kind of a cue to us saying, hey, if we actually showed sports content to people that have indicated that they're interested in sports, we're going to get much better response rates and efficiency. So that kind of bumped it up our priority queue. So we were like, all right, we need to use a recommendation engine. That sounds fun. Should we do a little bit more investigation to make sure this isn't only a one-time sports trend for MLB? So we did some analysis across web properties, just using unauthenticated cookies and what they were viewing. And we did indeed see like trends, like if you're visiting Ice Hockey Division I on NCAA, you're much more likely to visit Ice Hockey Division III on NCAA, other things on NCAA, but also Bleacher Report National Hockey League. So that's a brand that's not even NCAA under our portfolio that could be a good recommendation for those users. Same thing with entertainment. If you visit the Big Bang Theory pages on TBS, you're not only more likely to visit Young Sheldon and Friends, like other sitcoms or derivative series, but you're also more likely to visit the Big Bang Theory page on HBO Max. And that's another one of our brands. So it was kind of a cue to us that we have some cross-content and cross-brand engagement that could be used for powering a recommendation engine. So we knew that we had the data to feed into a recommendation to do stuff. So we were like, all right, we need to do a recommendation engine. Why Amazon Personalize? So there's 5 reasons here, and there are pretty big ones. It can train efficiently on a really large quantity of interactions data. Like we're feeding 30 million plus qualified events into it every week. That's quite a large volume for it to efficiently train on. It incorporates real-time user interactions into inference within seconds. That's another big thing for us. You know, if you're a new user on the site, what we know about you may consist of what you've done in the past 3 minutes. So we don't want to wait until overnight, some sort of batch job to update the model, and then wait until you come back the next day. That's when we have you. So we'd like to incorporate that information into the recommendations right then. There is a seamless API, an inference API for the web promo server to query in real time with auto scaling. So the model exists, but we've got visitors coming in, right now, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, depending on what's going on. We need to get inference for those users really fast with auto scaling. So Personalize has that as a feature. Another reason is it interfaces directly with the existing AWS architecture. So Tim showed our architecture slide. There's a lot of Kinesis on there. Basically, we set up Kinesis Firehose and paired that with a Lambda. And that was all we needed to start ingesting events into the recommendation engine in real time, which was awesome. And for all those reasons, it was a fast go-to-market. I think once we started POCing, experimenting, we had a trained model with a scalable inference API within about 2 days, which was really cool. So I'll talk about a little bit of the details of how things get from point A to point B, and then what the data looks like, and then we'll go into examples of recommendations and see it in action. So we have some of our brands listed over here on the left, our web and digital properties. So as those events are coming in, as users are engaging with those properties, basically, like I said, that hits Kinesis. And we were basically able to set up a Kinesis Firehose customer stream that features a Lambda call. And that Lambda basically identifies whether the event is something that we want to send to Personalize, like it's a page start event for one of the brands that we have recommendations for, that sort of thing. So it does that filter, and it grabs what it needs from the payload, from that engagement data, and makes a call to Amazon Personalized put events. And that's really quick, and it goes into Amazon Personalized. So from the time that the consumer engages with the property to Personalize grabbing that and incorporating it into its memory of what users have done, it's within seconds. I say within like 5 seconds here. Often it's like as fast as I can actually test. So like super, super quick. And just here's an example of what the data looks like. I think when most people think of Amazon Personalized, they're like, oh, that'd be good for like an online retail use case or like an authenticated streaming service use case. We're feeding in our Warner Brothers Discovery first-party cookie ID as the universal identifier or the user identifier. We feed it an item ID, which is kind of synonymous with like a site section or a page URL. That example is for American Dad series on TBS. A timestamp. So those top 3 rows, those fields are kind of like the super important ones for Personalize. It does a lot of analysis on sequences of user interactions and trying to predict what the next item in the user sequence will be. And then you can also feed in like event type, event values, like engaged seconds, video time spent, that sort of thing. Geolocation or device, and you can set up fields that are custom to your business in the schema and incorporate those in different ways. But this is an example of just how unauthenticated web traffic data can be fed into Personalize. All right, so enough of me talking about it. Let's see it in action. So I've got an example here of tbs.com. The promo carousel has loaded for this new user. This is a brand new user. Generic TNT and some other popular HBO Max stuff. So let's go to the flight attendant on HBO Max and visit there. And then go back to TBS and see if Personalize has updated what it thinks it should show us. And it's kind of doing a retargeting play for the flight attendant, but also witches and Doom Patrol. So the analysis that it's doing there is based on co-interaction and visit sequence, and it's updated obviously within seconds, as we just saw, which is awesome. And just some other examples that I think are somewhat intuitive, like if you visit American Dad on TBS.com, you'll get other animated content like Bob's Burgers. And then like female lead shows like Gilded Age will produce similar female lead shows from HBO Max. So that's what it does. So what's been the impact? I think it's been pretty positive. So there's two analyses that I'll show here. The first is just a basic over time analysis of how our response rate to our promos has increased over time. So basically the y-axis here is the percentage of exposed users that clicked on a promo by month. So when we started in October and November, just with our manual promo carousel kind of showing things at random, our response rate was like 0.5%. So we started using Amazon Personalize in December, loading interactions in bulk around every 4 hours, and that increased up to 0.9%. And then in March 2022, we started using the real-time interactions via Kinesis and Lambda, and our response rate then and then the following month was 1.8%, 1.9%. So that's like I think a 4x increase, which was really nice to see. That's just an over time analysis. We do have another framework for looking at things, which is kind of an A/B test. So a small group of users, 10 to 20%, are a placebo randomized control group on our sites for the promo carousel at any given time. So they will not be served the banner if they get to the point that it would normally load. So that's kind of our placebo holdout group. So the bars here are basically a lift, a comparison of the exposed versus that randomized control. And obviously, you're not served a promo in control, so we would expect the percentage users clicking on a promo in control to be 0%, 2% in exposed. That's kind of what you saw in the last chart, 1.8, 1.9% in the latter months. We saw an increase of 12% exposed versus control in users visiting multiple brands. We saw an increase of 4% exposed versus control in terms of visitors active on multiple dates. We saw an increase of 11% in terms of the average page loads for the exposed users versus control users, and an increase of 14% of engaged time, which is like if you're actually scrolling or navigating around the page in exposed versus control users. So basically, what we've seen is as we've adopted more of the personalization features, our responses increased over time, and when we do the exposed versus control analysis, our users are actually more engaged after we've shown them the carousel. So it's increasing engagement across our brands, which is awesome. And I think that's all we had. Is there anything you wanted to add, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, you might be asking yourself, well, wasn't someone at the highest level looking at cross-brand promotion? And unfortunately, maybe the answer is no. I mean, we have a lot of great marketing people, but they tend to be focused on their brand. You know, I'm the TBS marketing guy or whatever. And so it was really an opportunity for us to kind of step in and fill a void and to really look at the bigger picture and say, well, how do we win here? We win as long as they're staying inside our umbrella. We don't really care if they're, we don't care if they're on TBS or CNN or HBO Max. We just want them to stay inside of our, our world. So
yeah. And I think there's a little, cross-brand promotion, but it's very manual. Like, oh, we want to promote here, and we got to go talk to these guys and manually put it on the page. Or
should have clarified, there was no automatic stuff going on. So, yeah.
And this makes it very seamless and easy. One of the harder parts is getting all the promos, and the promo manager. But in terms of the recommendation engine, Personalize has made it pretty easy.
We also built a little promo CMS for them to upload their promos and just be able to manage that more easily. So, what are your questions? It's a great question. I mean, so the question is, how do we get all the brands to buy in? The first thing is it's really incremental. Like I said, back in 2019, it was like, hey, you got to have Prism on your page to be compliant. So everybody had Prism already. And then we realized we could start injecting things on the page So we just, we just kind of put it to them that we're not really above the fold. We got to scroll down a little bit. And it turned out to be a little bit easier than we expected because there's just no overhead. Like he was saying, to run a house ad over here, you got to talk to this marketing manager, this advertising guy, say, hey, can I have what percentage of house ads can I run? All these conversations that just take forever and not going to happen. And we just made it really easy, and it just happens automatically. Told them we'd measure it, and it wasn't as hard as all that.
Yeah.
So.
I think another aspect was starting small, and especially having that hypothesis testing was basically a way for us to easily say, let's just start on 5% of your traffic or something like that. So it's not a big risk or whatever.
Another thing, building in our A/B framework.
Yeah.
Hey, we could start with 1%. If you're nervous, let me start with 1%. We'll let you know how it goes.
And I think having our library have a good diversity of promos, once you are on one brand and you're able to show someone that brand is promoting someone else's brand, you go to that other brand, they're like, oh, this brand is kind of playing nice and they're promoting us, so I could do this, but reciprocally, I could get traffic from them. So as long as they're nice enough to be in that mindset.
Effect started to play in.
Yeah, and I think synergy in general is kind of a nice trend in the industry right now. It's not just about acquiring libraries; it's merging them together and stuff like that.
Yep.
What about the total cost of ownership of using the Amazon personalized?
Do you know that?
Total cost of ownership, what's it costing
Chris,
us right
how
now?
much do we pay for that?
I think my perspective is, you can go and train the model, you can go train your own ALS thing. I think the infrastructure for serving in real time and auto scaling and being able to put those pieces together quickly, it's financially, I think it made sense for us.
It's definitely cheaper than it would have been if we built it on our own.
Yeah, and our Discovery Plus counterparts did a presentation at reInvent last year, and they were talking about how it would have taken them 6 months to a year or something like that. I don't want to quote it directly to get to that point, and that would have been a lot of development expense, where with Personalized it was very fast and cheap initially, but I don't have a specific quantity.
Has cost estimation tools on their website. You can go check them. Yeah, it doesn't help that we spend a lot of money with AWS. It doesn't hurt.
Right.
Along the same lines with that, are those costs distributed out across the different brands that utilize the service, or are they handled at the?
Yes, so that's a great question. So we've historically had a corporate budget where we don't have to bill back. We don't have to allocate back to the brands for this. I don't know how long that'll continue, but it's essentially free for them. So that's another reason why they said, yeah, sure, go ahead. It's free, right? So. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So while you were launching Brizip, did you have any data privacy roadblocks in California, Germany, Europe? Did you have GDPR concerns? Because the whole personalization foundation is on Prism, and Prism had data collection.
Yeah. The only concern is for people who have marked themselves or set their cookies or set their CCPA or GDPR status in a certain way. We can't really cross promote them, but we can still do personalization within that domain, right? And certain browsers also make it difficult. We're kind of fighting an arms race with browsers about cross-site things. We're able to do it, at the moment with Chrome really well, which is the biggest browser, but it may not continue forever. So long story short, we don't have PII. In this instance, we're not gathering PII. We don't know who you are. We just know that you're a person who, according to personalization, machine learning, would like the same as this person. We don't even know who either one of you are. We just know you both like the same things. So yeah.
And another component of that is, let's say you've opted out on one of our sites, we do look up, whether you've opted out before we incorporate certain information into the recommendations.
SDK as well.
Yeah.
So we know all these things.
So we have those users, you know, for the opt-outs, and we're able to reference them quickly. So it wasn't a big roadblock, but there was a week when we needed to incorporate that.
He mentioned in the Lambda, it has qualified. The Lambda filters out everybody who's not qualified.
Yeah.
So.
If we have to follow up on the personalized, like, I know that it was easy to get going.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the point where you realize that maybe it was too simplistic and you want to do more and it felt limiting at some level. And I asked partially because we cleared out personalized, and I think our data scientists get to a point where they want to do more, and then so we got, you know, it was like a bad way to kind of discuss if it was, if we want to do something a little more sophisticated, should we, you know, go to like SageMaker or whatever, you know, other tools or whatnot.
I personally, I don't think we've reached that point yet. We're still fairly early on our journey. There's still a lot of features of personalized that we haven't explored yet. And there are quite a bit of, you know, dials and knobs, you know, for hyperparameter tuning and that sort of thing. And they're introducing new recipes all the time. So I haven't gotten to that point yet.
You know, as you can see from the demo, this is not the top of the line carousel that's, you know, on HBO Max. I actually don't know what they're using on HBO Max. They may be using personalized, but our use case is relatively simple. It's just promotions. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, this is a great conversation. Appreciate their time and all the questions, and